guess I should say what we're doing again.
Go.
All right, so let's do the questions on the second part of chapter 14. We'll start with the first one, and Ramona.
Oh, what is the rash oath that Saul makes? He says, "Cursed is the man who eats any food until evening, before I have taken vengeance on my enemies."
All right, very good. And so immediately, there's two things in here that just kind of red flag. What would you say they would be? What would you guess?
Are we talking about question 2 then?
No, not the consequences, but just from that oath. Is there anything in there that red flags to you?
Well, his son wasn't aware of him.
Okay, but just the oath itself. Just the oath itself.
Well, he's hateful.
Okay.
He's going to hurt anybody that doesn't go along with him.
Okay.
Cursing them.
Okay.
I have taken vengeance on my enemies.
Okay.
You didn't take into consideration what it would do to people.
Okay. None of that. And so he is making a rash oath that really doesn't make any sense when you think it out and what the next questions are going to answer. It doesn't make any sense. And then the second thing is, I have taken vengeance on mine enemies, Instead of, you would assume that he might say something along the lines of, the enemies of Israel or the enemies of the Lord or anything. Okay? So, number 2.
I like the rash part.
The rash oath.
Which way are we going?
Go that way. Go ahead.
What are the consequences of that oath?
Yes.
The people were faint, exhausted and weak, from lack of food, and they rushed to eat. But that
Goes on to another one.
I know, I kept saying that.
So do you want me to go ahead and answer it?
No, just that part of it. The consequences of the oath without answering the next question to it is what you first started out.
Okay, they were faint and weak, and they didn't.
That's it.
They weren't able to eat.
They weren't able to eat.
So they're exhausted, they're faint, they're weak.
And they didn't make that much ground against the Philistines because they didn't have the strength to fight.
Right. They didn't have the strength to fight because they were hungry and weak and unable to do what they needed. Low blood sugar. Absolutely. All right, number 3.
What did Jonathan do, and was this wrong? He was not aware of his father's oath, and he dipped his rod in the honey that was there in the forest and ate it. And was it wrong? Well, since he wasn't aware, no, I don't think so.
Okay. I would agree with that. Did anyone have another answer? So he didn't know about it, and besides, it was a really bad oath. Do you think that had he known about it and done that, would it have been wrong?
In the disobedience.
Yeah, that would have been.
Okay, so there would have been some disobedience there. So do we have an obligation to follow a bad law or a bad rule?
Yes, we do.
If it goes against God's law.
Yeah.
If it's a law,
Authority.
that's the thing. If it's the law,
Okay.
it's just like the thing that is going on now with the marijuana. There, people that smoked it a long time ago, it was against the law. They broke the law, so they were wrong. Now it's legal, so they can smoke all they want.
We have to respect it. We have to respect it until their hearts
So I mean,
dead.
to me, if it's a law, that's the law.
Okay.
As long as it doesn't go against the laws of God.
Yeah.
That's the
Right.
distinction.
That's the
Okay.
distinction.
Yeah.
It's an interesting dilemma to be put in. I don't know that I have the answer to it. I'm just saying it's an interesting dilemma. It was a bad ruling. It put them at a disadvantage, and most important in my viewpoint is God never asked for it. It was simply Saul, who we find out is making a lot of bad decisions. So what I'm trying to get you to do is put yourself in the position of the people who are following Saul. And what a dilemma that is when you have a leader who's making poor choices, poor decisions, and yet there's an obligation to do what it is that the law says that you have to do.
And part of it is also a consequence of them wanting a king.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And exactly.
Yeah.
But it is you know, it's a hard place to be in when you know that the rules that you have to follow are not good rules. And I think we struggle, there's a struggle that goes on with, you know, it's clear, of course, if it goes against God's law, it's very clear. But if it's something that you just see as bad for society or bad for, you know, what's our obligation there? I'm like I say,
take for instance the law that's in. I'm trying not to talk very long, but the law that's in the schools now about teaching the children about homosexuality and transgender, and the books actually say if those people in your neighborhood don't agree with it, they're mean people. I mean, I've seen the books,
Wow.
and that's a law that
I'm not teaching.
none of us here, I don't think, agree with. But what do we do about that?
Can you opt out? I think you can opt out of the teaching, can't you?
They say it's going to be so integrated that there's not like a day where you can opt out.
well, it's reaching a point where it's going to become very difficult. And I think this particular situation, I can foresee a time coming very soon where it's going to rear its ugly head over and over and over again. And we are going to have to make decisions. A lot of people choose to homeschool. A lot of people are choosing to home church. A lot of people are staying away from certain activities, coming out of certain clubs and no longer being a part of certain clubs. There's a lot of things that are happening in society that we as Christians are going to have to determine how we're going to stand for that. So this is just kind of a something to think
It's
about
an interesting question because
Yeah.
of what's happening.
Yep,
I'll
absolutely.
tell you what, if I was still teaching, I would not teach it. I just wouldn't and suffer the consequences.
And then what ends up happening is then that teacher comes before the school board, because I'm saying being a school board member, that teacher comes before the school board and the school board's hands are tied because the state of California runs everything that we say, and then you have to reprimand someone who you agree with. But you have to because you don't have an option. So it just kind of boomerangs itself around. There's not a
I
whole
think
lot you
that
can
did
do.
happen, Bonnie, where, that the teacher said, no, I cannot teach this, and they had somebody sub for her.
But
But
now
now-
that loophole's closing up.
Yeah,
I went to Stephanie Torrek's thing that she did at our church, and she had done her homework and did a bullet point, just everything about the law, how it's going to be integrated. She even had books there that show what from kindergarten, and she said it's all the way through 12th grade. It's so integrated, and not only is that integrated, but the hate thing is being integrated along with it, so that those of us who stand against it are being taught. The children are being taught that we're mean. So
And then we
it's
hate them.
right
Yeah.
here. I mean, you're not going to be able to separate yourself out as a teacher. I don't want to go into it anymore.
Glad we're retired.
All right, well, something to think about. Number 4.
What did Jonathan say once he heard what his father had done? He said, "My father has troubled the land. I tasted a little honey, and my countenance brightened. How much greater is the slaughter except for the oath."
Okay, so now he is, as a son, as a subject, actually, making a comment against the sovereign king. My father has troubled the land. What is he saying? My father has caused trouble. He's done wrong in the land. So we see Jonathan stepping up in a position that some people would say, well, he's going against the king. But he is making a statement that was true. Would he have done what he did had he known? I don't know.
Probably not.
But interesting to think that he recognized immediately, my father's troubled the land. This is a poor decision that he's made for us. All right, number 5. Marianne.
Sorry. Because of their great hunger, what deplorable and sinful act did the people do? They mate with blood.
All right, and Jude, number 6.
They what?
What
They-
did you say?
They ate meat with blood.
Ate meat with the blood that was still in it. And number 6, what was wrong with that act?
Against God's law to eat blood. It's not Leviticus 17, life is in blood.
All right, so God says 2 things about that. Life is in the blood, So, and the blood and the fat of every animal belonged to God. So anytime an animal was sacrificed, that blood was collected and poured out before the altar as a sacrifice to God along with the fat of the animal. And so to consume it was to take God's portion because the life is in the blood. And that life that God gave now belongs back to God. You can see the why that would make sense and why it's such a poor, why it's such a negative thing for them to do that, because now they're leaving God out of that cycle.
That's a big deal.
Yeah, that He gave the life, and so the blood of the life now belongs to Him. Or yeah, the life that was in the blood now belongs back to Him. Right, number 7.
How did Saul try and fix the situation? He told them to bring their ox and their sheep and to him and slaughter them there, and not to go against God by eating the blood.
Okay, and he said, roll a large stone over here to me. What was he going to do with the large stone? He was going to
Make an altar.
build the altar that he was going to properly slaughter the animals the way that they needed to be done, where they could be bled out and taken care of there, and demanded that they slaughter correctly. So number 8.
Could Saul, according to, is it me or, no, you're passing. Could, where am I? Number
8.
Could Saul, according to law, build a high altar? And yes, he could. Anyone could build the altar, but not everyone could sacrifice on the altar. Only the high priest.
All right. So he could build a high altar, which is what this turns out to be. We see evidence of that many times in the Bible with the patriarchs and people who build altars. But to sacrifice on the altar, only a Levite priest could do that.
Not just the high priest.
No, not just the high priest. A Levite priest would be the one who could do that.
Weren't all the priests Levites?
Yes, all the priests were Levites, but not all Levites were priests. So you could be a Levite and have a job that supported. Maybe you could shepherd sheep, or you could do other things that supported the priesthood without actually becoming a priest. But if you were a priest, it was only from the tribe of Levite that could become a priest.
I have one other little thing to say about that.
Okay.
That was the first and only altar built by Saul mentioned in the Bible.
Okay.
Just a little
It is,
tidbit.
yep, it is the first.
Told him to bring their
All right, number 9.
He would slaughter them and serve it without.
Number 9.
Oh, sorry. Let's see. Saul needs to know if his plan to attack the Philistines was correct. How did he seek reassurance? Well, he asked the priest to find out for him.
Okay.
And how did he seek reassurance? Well, he wanted the counsel of God
Okay. And how did that come about? He asked the priest.
through the ephod.
Okay, through the ephod, through that vest that was being worn, and we're going to see that over and over and over again, that seeking the high priest, seeking God's direction would come through the ephod, or the Urim and the Thummim that would give direction.
But
Yeah.
didn't on that also, didn't the high priest go to Saul and tell him this is what you should do?
Right?
Saul never thought of going to God with it. The priest suggested that he do that.
That we need to seek it here. And
Yeah.
then, well, I think, and then Saul, let's see, where are we at here? Saul says, builds an
really
altar,
thought that
and the priest.
In this,
So-
Saul never thought of going to God first.
Well, 37 says, so Saul asked counsel of God. Shall I go down after the Philistines? Will you deliver them into the hand of Israel? So the priest did say, let us draw near to God here. So the priest is saying, let's do this. Let's ask direction of God while we're here right now. Let's do that. And so then it says, and Saul asked counsel of God. So he knows that the direction is going to come through that Urim and Thummim, through the ephod. All right, number 10.
What were the results when he tried to find out what God desired? God didn't answer.
All right, God would not answer him. So once again, kind of put yourself in that position. You ask the question and you get no response from God. You're used to getting some type of a response, a yay or a nay, or some sort of answer. You get nothing when you ask, what do you think they're thinking? What do you think is going on with there?
Something's wrong.
Something, well,
Okay.
yeah.
They're
yeah.
recognizing that something is going on. The priest is letting them know that there's nothing. So Saul then begins to figure out what it is that he needs to do. Number 11.
Saul decides to find out who was the problem. Why God would not answer. He has lots from the high priest to decide that the issue is Jonathan. What does he do? And I'm reading my answer, and it's not making
Doesn't sound right to you? So the high priest has let him know, because they've made the decisions through that the problem is Jonathan.
Well, what I wrote with the quote was, "For he has worked with God this day."
Okay.
And Jonathan found favor with the people, and they proclaimed. But then is that the next?
That's the next one.
I kept jumping
Okay.
ahead on all of these.
So when he finds out that the problem is Jonathan, Saul does a second rash oath, or a second thing that he says. He says,
Turns him over.
Jonathan must
Yeah.
die.
We don't care.
And
As
so-
long as he's not wrong.
And so he has to, so I think what we're seeing from these two oaths that are being explained in this chapter, is we can see that Saul is making poor choices. He's making bad decisions and seemingly sticking with those bad decisions regardless of what the consequences are with them. And so
I think there might have been a little bit of jealousy involved
Yeah.
here.
Well, I'm
Like
sure.
he was
Yeah.
jealous
He-
of David.
he seems to be that type of personality where it's all about him. And so the fact that someone else would get any type of attention is immediately going to flag him. We're going to see a lot of that when we start getting into the next sections. So, all right, and then number 12, which you almost were ready to go for. What's that, Sherry?
How did the people protect Jonathan? The people said to Saul, "Shall Jonathan die, who has accomplished this great deliverance in Israel? Surely not. As the Lord lives, not a hair of his head shall fall to the ground, for he has worked with God this day." So the people rescued Jonathan.
All right, not one hair of his head shall fall to the ground. So we talked last week a little bit about how difficult that had to be to stand up, although it's a little bit easier when you're in mass than just one person on your own, but still to stand up to the king and say, no, that's not the way this is going to happen, because Saul has done something really great for us. We're not going to allow this to happen. I mean, that's pretty out of the ordinary, but it does go to show you the power that comes behind having
Numbers.
the numbers of people come. Saul
Don't you
recognizes.
think by this time they were kind of going, this is our king, but he isn't doing a very good job.
Right. You would think that they would recognize that there's some poor decisions that have been made in the last 24, 48 hours, not to mention whatever came before that also. But
We call
yeah.
it automatic failure.
Automatic failure?
Yeah, given two choices, you always make the poor one. It's, yeah. We pray for people with that problem.
So Saul was having that issue. All right.
Yeah, really. Yeah.
All right.
And
Number
there are people who do that.
Yeah, that seem to choose to make the wrong decisions
matter
for a
what.
number of reasons. Yep, I agree. That seems to be an issue for a lot of people. All right, number 13. Marianne, that would be yours.
Saul's rash oath. In retrospect, what had caused all the trouble in the first place? Saul's rash oath, his pride, and I think some jealousy of Jonathan's accomplishments.
All right, so what had caused all the trouble in the first place? Bad oath.
But the people wanted a king. That's where it all started.
Okay, there you go. People selecting the king. That starts. The bad oath. What was some of the other things, Marianne?
Pride.
Pride. Saul's pride.
And when he made a
Not
bad decision,
repenting.
He
Yeah.
would stick with it. He would make
Pride,
excuses.
Pride,
Yeah.
that's pride. When you recognize it's a bad decision, you know it is, but you're gonna stick with it anyway because you refuse to change. That's pride.
I'm right.
You double down. You double down. There you go. And the lack of seeking God's direction in these things. If he had sought God's direction before he made the oath about the people not eating, if there had been that had happened, then he wouldn't have been in that situation, and then Jonathan wouldn't have been in that situation, and so it just kind of went all the way down, not from not seeking God's direction in everything.
He
that
never
had
went
to
to
do.
God first. He always did his thing.
Well, yep.
Well, he did go to God at that point, but then when God didn't answer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
He
exactly.
went ahead and,
He didn't try to figure out what the problem was, why God wouldn't answer him.
Well, he does, but he does it incorrectly by saying, you know, when he hears what it is and what Jonathan has done, any rational person, not to mention father, would have said, I understand, you didn't hear what it was, you know, I can understand that and let it go, but he just proceeded with it because he had made a decision and his pride wouldn't allow him to back down. So,
That's
We're
very
gonna-
frightful when you'll kill your own child.
that is, isn't it?
Wow.
That is really
Right.
something.
It does
All right.
make you think about when you have a decision to make and you really don't have a concrete answer from God, or you feel like it's from God, that it's best not to do anything.
Yeah, wait, right?
Wait.
And waiting is a difficult thing.
It is.
It is a very difficult thing because we have a time frame that we expect our answers to
But
come
our
in,
time frame is not this.
and it's a difficult thing. Francie, can we turn this off while we do our reading?
Well, Jonathan and his armor bearer had just delivered Israel.